So, welcome to the podcast, Eleanor. How are you?
Doing fantastic.
Amazing. It's so exciting to have you on all the way from Philadelphia. We were just chatting into how you're living on a beautiful property now, and that's just so special. I love that so much for you. I would love to begin with you sharing a little self-love ritual with us, a way that you show your self-love before we really dive into who you are, what you're all about, and the big favorite.
Sounds good. Yeah. A big self-love ritual for me is just mindfulness. And especially when I am in the shower every morning, I show each part of my body love by cleaning it. And it's just a good reminder for just to give gratitude to every bit of yourself for showing up and, making each day count.
That's so special. And I love that so much. Like, as you're cleansing that space, sending it gratitude, sending it love, because so often, like, everyone's just like, go, go, go on this busy schedule, brushing your teeth really fast, chucking soap on, jumping out. And it's just so nice to have that presence. So, thank you for sharing.
Totally. Yeah, of course. And that actually came from a friend of mine. It was a suggestion, and it's been just such a nice change.
Yeah, totally. Especially when you do lead a busy life, right? It's like, I'm just going to take this time just for me. And that's perfect.
Absolutely. It is so important, especially as an entrepreneur.
Mm. So I would love for you to, explain a little bit about the big favorite. I'm a little bit aware of the history with your grandfather first founding the big favorite, and then you've kind of come in, given it its new like character and all the things. And I would just love for you to share about the big favorite.
Yeah, sure. So the big favorite is actually simple, clean, iconic basics for your wardrobe. And it's really meant to be a mindful part of your wardrobe. So something that's really versatile, something that is, can go with anything in your wardrobe, that's high quality, well made, and it's made consciously. So sustainably, on fair wage, reduced water waste. And then, of course, the thing we're probably most well known for, which is our circular take back program. So anything you buy and you wear out, you can send back to the brand and we will recycle it into something new. So that's a little bit about the big favorite. The history behind it is it's actually my great grandfather's brand. And it started as American workwear back in the 30s through the 60s. He sold that company. He had actually several different lines of clothing. He sold the company to Dickies in the 1960s. And he retired to a cattle farm. And fast forward a few decades, I didn't really know about this until I was literally in college studying it. So it was quite a shock to me, and I, went back to my dad especially and said, "Hey, you know, how could you leave this out?" And so he told me the whole story, and here we are today. So I kind of put it in my back pocket, and through a decade-long career in corporate fashion, decided to revive it as something bit more sustainable and mindful.
That's such a crazy story, but it's also like such a soul calling for you to be studying that with no awareness around it and then finding that it's almost just like one of those moments of like confirmation that you were definitely on the correct path, and to
Absolutely.
reshape it in that way of sustainability, of caring so deeply like for our planet, but also in turn, something we will be getting into in this episode is very much like the harmful effects of fabric that aren't sustainably created and that are not natural. So I do just love so much how the big favorite seems to be very much focused around just coming back to nature, which is just,
Absolutely.
I love that. And it really aligns with like the work I do. I work with women in their menstrual cycle and bringing them back to how we are literally the reflection of, the earth seasons. So when I did like come across your brand, I was like, oh my goodness, no one else could be perfect enough to speak into, that conversation around like the harmful effects of fabric and how in turn that can also, affect our health. Um,
Absolutely. And especially our cycles.
yeah. So I would love for you to like have a little chat into that if you feel open to, of, how these like fabric dyes or different fabrics or clothing that are made of synthetic materials can affect our hormones, which in turn affects our cycle.
Absolutely. So it's really interesting. Like throughout my career, I never really understood like the health effects of plastic fibers in our clothing. But as I progressed in my career, what became abundantly clear was that more and more plastic was finding its way into clothing. And I would literally sit in production meetings and, production would say, or actually merchandising would say, well, listen, we got to get our margin up. What do we do? And production would come back and say, okay, well, why don't we add more poly, meaning more polyester, meaning more plastic? And when it comes to your undergarments, truly, I mean, these are really sensitive areas. Having a chemical or a synthetic fiber near your sensitive areas is really, it's quite dangerous actually, because these plastic fibers have so many chemicals on them, and it just is a chemical. A lot of people ask me, well, can I wash it off? And the answer is no. It's just inherent in the fiber. Um, these fibers definitely hold things like BPA, PFAS, which is like a big conversation that we're having right now, especially with all the recent news of, sports bras and also period underwear having PFAS in it. These are hormone disrupting chemicals. They sort of act like hormones, and they can disrupt your endocrine system. They can cause cancer. They can cause all kinds of health issues. And not to mention, like, just general problems with pH. They're not breathable. You just can't, your body cannot move through its own natural cycles um, while wearing this kind of fabric.
Mm.
So it's really, really important to, raise awareness on this subject. And it was really important to me to make a product that was 100% plastic free. And it is possible. People are like, wait, how does your product stretch? I don't understand. Like, cotton isn't necessarily like a stretchy fiber. But when you knit it, different knit structures help it with its stretchability, and it can actually stretch around curves. And so that's how we've been able to engineer plastic completely out of our fabric. And plus, we use really beautiful Pima cotton, which is like a luxury cotton. And it's like so incredibly soft and luxurious. And so that's how we've been able to completely create a line of products without polyester inside of the fabric.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your dedication to the earth, to also the health of every customer that buys from you, because it's so important. And a lot of people, it's very much like money driven these days. So to know that there are, of course, people out there that are really trying to create that impact is just so huge. And I just want to like thank you so much for that. And also for sharing the wisdom around this, right? Because I have not heard a conversation like this. What actually brought this all to my awareness was I was scrolling on Instagram and I had a reel come up, and it was saying how back in the day, hospital beds were made of linen, and linen, the frequency of linen is a healing fabric.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how babies, we wrap them in linen. So why should we as adults be wrapping ourselves in polyester blankets and suffocating ourselves, really? But yeah, that frequency of fabrics thing really got me, because like I do a lot of energy work.
Oh my God, I'm so excited that you actually brought this up, because in my mind, I was like, should I go there or should I not go there? And I'm so glad that you want to talk about this, because yes, polyester absolutely affects the energy flow of your body. It affects your circulation, and it affects like everything. So truly, cotton is way better. Linen is actually the best. But natural fibers, like, just prioritize the natural fibers. There was actually like a study done, I want to say on mice,
Mhm.
and potentially even like humans. I'll have to look it up because I wasn't totally prepared to talk about this today, but like it really is a very interesting study where they actually show that your body's frequency changes when you wear polyester versus natural fibers, even when it's like cotton polyester. Like even if it's like a blended fabric, it still affects your energy flow and like it brings it way down.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And again, the lack of education there. I know for me as well, when I was looking into this, and this is only a fairly new topic that's come to my awareness, and I thought, oh, I wear natural fibers, like there wouldn't be much polyester. And I swear every single clothing item that I've spent 100 or hundreds of dollars on is polyester. And then the things that I've like, got from the op shop or whatever it might be are all the ones that are like still in my cupboard right now. I would love for you if you could share with the listeners, how would they know what their clothing is made out of? And are there
Yeah,
certain natural, like maybe go into the different types of fabrics as well?
sure. Yeah. So yes, the way that you would typically tell what is in your clothing is the content label. Every garment is required to have one. It is required to list the fabrics. So it's not actually required to list any trims or like the thread quality. The thread quality is such a small component of garments. So it really is, I think it's okay that it doesn't mention it. But what I'll say is, obviously cotton, hemp, or linen is like really wonderful. Wool is another great one. They have been able to spin super fine merino wool into a very commonly used fiber. So you'd be surprised, like there are wool socks now, there are wool t-shirts, there's like merino wool underwear, actually, even shockingly. I don't think it's like totally popular because it is slightly itchy. But wool is another good one. Obviously there's silk, but that's super high maintenance. And then you start getting into some of these more man-made fibers that are still cellulosic in nature. So that meaning they come from tree or wood pulp. There are some people who say man-made fibers like Tencel, Lenzing, Modal, things like that they still undergo an intense chemical process because they have to be pulped down and like spun into fiber. And also sometimes it does contribute to deforestation. So you want to make sure that you are checking for responsible sourcing on these things. That can be like a step below just a content label. You're going to have to kind of dig in and do your research. But I will say, listen, like they don't have plastic in them. So that means no petrochemicals. And that means they can biodegrade and break down in a natural environment. I always think that that's better than, polyester or lycra or elastane, which will leach microplastics into our water supply and then into our bodies, etc. And that leads me to polyester and all of the wild, crazy things that they're able to do with it. So vegan leather, love how they call it vegan leather. They don't tell you it's actually polyurethane and it is plastic. Anything that glitters or shimmers, that's plastic. Lycra, as I mentioned, elastane, polyester is a big one. Anything with like a PU, definitely polyester and plastic. So those are some of the ways that you can spot them, is like they have some sort of like weird name or a name that's associated with stretch. That is a dead giveaway. But other than that, like that's really how you would tell. You would really just want to go to your content label and make sure that it's natural, of course.
Amazing. And something that sort of popped into my mind as you were speaking into all of that is, I don't know if it's like it where you are, but I know in Australia, a lot of clothing brands are doing like this greenwashing, right? And the way that they're selling their clothes is by saying made out of like 90% plastic bottles, like recycled plastic bottles. So that is something that people need to be really looking out for. You're not saving the environment. You're not being a healthier version of yourself. You're actually, in turn, it's like detrimental because you're still funding money into that funnel.
Yes. Absolutely. And what I will say too is that having close friends who work in operations and who have actually done the digging on this, a lot of times these plastic bottles that are being quote unquote recycled are not even used. Okay. They're like overstock that come from a factory. Sometimes, even, especially in third world countries, they may even go down to the warehouse and they may say, give me 6 cases of water bottles, and they empty it all and they use those. Like, it's not necessarily always waste. And
Mm,
that's crazy. The other part is water bottles all have BPA in them. So
yeah.
whatever you're upcycling or recycling into fiber, it's going to contain the BPA. And that's another hormone disruptor. That's another thing that, has been banned across the world, except for in the US, strangely. But you want to just avoid this stuff. It's just not good. It's not good for anybody.
Yeah. I got goosebumps as you said that. It's so, like, you almost can't believe that there are organizations doing things like this
Yeah,
for a
it's
monetary gain.
shocking.
Yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
really is, like, oh my goodness. But we've covered all the fabrics, we've covered all of that. And as like the listeners can hear, you can opt for the more natural fibers, really looking at the labels on your clothes, really just looking in your cupboard and just like seeing what is it that you may be wearing more of. But before we sort of wrap up this episode, could you share some ways that people could begin to start choosing the more healthier and sustainable option for their clothing, without kind of shame spiraling that everything they own is made out of plastic?
Yeah, definitely. Look, the most sustainable piece of clothing is the one that's already in your closet. So the biggest thing is just wear your clothes for as long as you can. I mean, a year ago, a year and a half ago, we adopted a very sweet rescue dog, and she chewed holes into my favorite sweatsuit. And I sent it off to my local repair shop and I said, do what you can. And it came back with these beautiful bright orange stitching all over, these gray sweatpants and sweatshirt. And I just think it gives your clothes character. It's something to talk about. And you're also doing your part for the planet. So, like, keep repairing your clothes, keep them for as long as you can, keep wearing them. I think the other thing I'll say too, and this is really personal for people, is know yourself, right? Like, get to know yourself, get to know your personal style, get to know, like, really think hard about how you want to show up in the world and what you want to say about yourself, because that's going to make shopping so much easier and give you the ability to edit things and shop more consciously, like, I think slowing down and really examining what do you need, like what do you really need in your closet and how do you want to show up in the world, and that will give you a more streamlined approach to shopping versus, you know oh gosh, this is amazing, oh, let's make sure it's 100% cotton, like, just make sure you really need it first.
Yeah.
And it's I think that's really the message that I want to convey, is that shopping sustainably is a little bit of an oxymoron, but the way you can do it is by doing it really thoughtfully.
Not just going out and going, oh my gosh, this is linen, this is cotton, this is hemp, like I need it in my cupboard. Yeah, being really conscious about it. I love
Totally.
that. I love that so much. And that's such an important message. And our clothing really is a form of expression. So it's really powerful when you do tune into how do I want to be seen by the world?
I agree. I totally agree.
I love that so much. So your circular savings program, I just wanted to have a little bit more of a chat about that as we end this episode. How does it work? Is it available to customers all around the world? Because obviously a lot of my listeners are here in Australia. And yeah, just could you speak into that a little bit so we've got a bit more of an understanding?
Yes. So unfortunately, at this time, no, it's not available all around the world. And that is because ultimately the cost to ship things back is it's tough. It's tough to justify that. Um, but what I can say is we are on a larger scale, we are working with a company called 4 Days, and they are scaling their recycling operations globally. So I think they are powered by a company called Trashy, which is Trashie.
Hmm.
And so check them out. I think that they have some global recycling solutions, which is really exciting. And if they don't yet, then they will to come. But otherwise, if you come and buy stuff in the US and then you travel here a lot, it's easy. We make it really easy to either drop things off or just ship it in, and we pay for the return shipping.
Oh, beautiful. That's amazing. I love that you have that to offer as well. It's so incredible.
Yeah, we love it.
Yeah, so we better wrap up our episode. It was a nice, short, potent, and quick one. I'm sure everyone listening will just have that really like quick scoop into your wisdom around this. And I think it's really good to keep it a little bit shorter with this information as well, because it can feel like a lot, especially if you've never heard of it before. I know when I first sort of started looking into it, I was like, oh my gosh, my whole life is a lie. So yeah, super.
It's easy to get overwhelmed, especially with all of the bad news today. But I think the best thing we can do is envision the future that we want to see and raise awareness. And then we just create the future. Like, it's up to us. We can do that.
Mm, I love that. I love that so much. I would love for you to share where can everyone find you if they are wanting to have a look at your website and get some sustainable pieces of undergarments and basic clothing.
Yes, we're at thebigfavorite.com always. And we have our following on TikTok, which is really fun. And that's just at the big favorite, and the same for Instagram at the big favorite.
Amazing. Well, I'm sure people will check you out. I'll leave it all linked below. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast again. I'm so grateful that we were able to connect at such different time zones. So
Likewise, this was
exciting.
so fun.
Yeah, so good. So thank you everyone for listening, and I'll be back in your ears next Thursday at 5:55 a.m. Bye.